Welcome to today's explainer. We are going to be playing Mythbusters for any students of early world geography out there, or really just any curious history buffs. We're exploring the super famous, heavily romanticized phrase, "Here be dragons."
So, let's just jump right into it. When we think of the Age of Discovery, we all picture those old, weathered parchment maps, covered in strict warnings about mythical, fire-breathing beasts lurking at the edge of the known world. But the historical truth about these maps, and this iconic phrase, is actually far more surprising than you might think.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're hitting the great cartography myth, the singular Hunt Lennox globe, a whole lot of lions, elephants, and walruses, why we actually prefer the myth, and finally, modern metaphors and pop culture. All right, part one, the great cartography myth, or monsters on maps. Let's unpack this idea that dragons were just everywhere on old parchment. The phrase, hic sunt dracones, which is Latin for here be dragons, along with terra incognita for unknown land, is absolutely legendary today. But here's the thing. For the map makers of the time, slapping a monster on a map wasn't meant to imply a literal scientific belief in fire-breathing lizards. It was basically just the medieval equivalent of a massive do not enter sign. It indicated dangerous, unmapped territories where totally unseen hazards were waiting for naive sailors.
Take a look at these incredibly ornate, terrifying sea monsters attacking ships in Olaus Magnus's Carta Marina from 1539. These were really just a symbolic, artistic way to say, watch out. They stood in for very real, uncharted dangers like deadly storms, jagged reefs, or hostile territories. They were artistic stand-ins for danger.
Moving right along to Section 2, the singular Hunt Lennox globe. And guys, this is arguably the biggest plot twist in the history of early cartography.
Here's the wild part. That supposedly ubiquitous phrase, it's kind of a massive anachronism. Despite what literally every pirate movie has told us, the exact Latin phrase HKCSVNT dracones appears historically only once, just one single time. It was carved onto this one artifact, the Hunt Lennox globe, which dates to roughly 1504 to 1508. And you'll find it placed right out on the extreme periphery of the eastern coast of the Asian continent.
So you've got this massive modern myth of thousands of maps plastered with dragon warnings, right? And then the historical reality is just one single globe. It's a huge disconnect, which kind of forces us to ask, well, if map makers weren't constantly warning us about dragons, what were they actually warning us about?
That brings us to Section 3, lions, elephants, and walruses, real-world monsters. If they weren't drawing dragons, what was going into the blank spaces? Believe it or not, the actual historical standard was completely different. Rather than dragons, the classical phrase used by Roman and medieval map makers was actually hic sunt leones, which means here are lions. You'd also commonly see text warnings about areas where scorpions are born or where giant hippos live. They were terrified of actual real-world wildlife. Mapmakers would often draw these completely misunderstood versions of those real animals. Like, take this bizarre elephant-like creature with 4 legs, ridiculously long teeth, and these super angry eyes from a 1516 map of Norway. They called it a morses. But what you're actually looking at is a horribly mangled, second-hand description of a walrus. Seriously, to a European mapmaker who had never actually seen one, a walrus sounded like an absolute monster. The great Irish satirist Jonathan Swift totally nailed this cartography practice in a poem back in 1733. He wrote, "So geographers in African maps with savage pictures fill their gaps, and o'er uninhabitable downs place elephants for want of towns." They literally just slapped majestic animals into the empty spaces because they had absolutely no clue what towns or geography were actually out there. Okay, Section 4. Why we prefer myths, the ultimate unknown. This brings up a super fascinating question about human psychology. It's really worth asking. Why did that one single globe with a dragon warning completely wipe out centuries of maps accurately warning people about lions, elephants, and scorpions? Why did "here be dragons" become the phrase that stuck in our collective memory? Well, the answer is that society prefers the dragon myth because it takes a completely boring blank space on a map and turns it into this thrilling, mythological frontier. I mean, a lion is a known threat, but a dragon? That's magic. Now, interestingly, the placement of the phrase on the Hunt Lennox globe near Southeast Asia might have actually stemmed from terrifying sailor rumors of real-life Komodo dragons in Indonesia. But over time, the dragon just became the ultimate symbol for stepping right off the edge of human knowledge. And finally, Section 5, Modern Metaphors and Pop Culture. Dragons today. Let's see how this historical quirk evolved into a really powerful modern concept.
Nowadays, the phrase has completely left the parchment map and crossed over into the digital and financial worlds as a metaphor for unknown risks. In software development, programmers will actually leave comments in their code saying, "Here be dragons," to warn other devs to steer clear of incredibly complex, poorly written, or easily breakable sections. And in the financial markets, risk managers use the acronym TBD, literally, "There be dragons," to flag unforeseeable catastrophic risks in investment portfolios. Tracking this phrase's journey across time is just wild. It starts on a lone 16th century globe in 1504, and then leaps all the way into modern consciousness. It was heavily popularized in a 1985 historical novel by Sharon K. Penman. By 2009, it was the official motto for the massive Chaos Computer Club hacker convention, and in 2025, it's even the title of an album by the heavy metal band Avantasia. The cultural staying power here is just phenomenal.
You see this exact same psychological warning everywhere in pop culture today, too. When you hit the invisible wall at the edge of the open world in games like The Witcher 3 or Grand Theft Auto, the game literally tells you, "Here be dragons." In sci-fi shows like The Expanse or Star Trek The Next Generation, captains use the phrase when they are staring out into the deep, totally unmapped void of space.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to ponder. We might have successfully mapped out the entire physical Earth, basically replacing the terrifying unknown with GPS satellites. But as we look toward things like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and deep space exploration, we're always going to need a way to label the dangerous, exciting edges of human knowledge. So, where are your dragons?